Hi, Nigel. I find it deeply ironic that you've been out criticising the BBC today because of that bad edit about Donald Trump, which incidentally, Nigel, doesn't really defame Donald, does it? Because Donald defames himself. Plus, of course, it's a little bit dodgy that Donald keeps trying to sue all the companies that he feels are critical of him. It's a bit like, remember when you stopped the local newspapers talking to you because they were critical of you? It's the same kind of theory. But anyway, my point being, it's ironic that you're criticising the BBC when you yourself have blatantly lied about people and have failed to apologise. Now, these 5 survivors who you misrepresented in your press conference have now waited 14 days for an apology from you. If I was advising those women, I'd suggest that they sued you for defaming them. Anyway, I digress. You should apologise to them. It's been 14 days. They deserve better. But here's an interesting thing that's come out today. Apparently, Laura Kuenssberg and the BBC were doing a documentary on reform, looking at your unique rise, which has now led Lyndon, your great leader down in Kent, to say, should she carry on with the documentary? Because, well, you know, she doesn't want to be misrepresented. That'll be the Lyndon that we all saw on that Zoom telling people to suck it up or fuck it off. Lyndon, who's lost control of her councillors and has lost so many of them, the Fire Brigade Union have nicknamed her Captain Chaos because they are now directly impacted by her incompetence. But she's worried that an edit is going to make her look bad. Maybe this was the final straw for her. Seemingly, they're about to lose another councillor. Anyway, Lyndon was taking no chances and has decided to withdraw all support from the film, even going so far as rescinding permission already given. Meanwhile, you just keep churning out the stuff, don't you, saying the BBC have been institutionally biased for years, which incidentally, Nigel, now seems to mean that if they say anything that you don't agree with, that is institutionally biased. Of course, you don't actually need the BBC to spread your propaganda, do you? Because you've mastered social media more than any other political figure in the UK, actually. Gee, 7 million people. I mean, you mastered social media back in your MEP days when an aide used to upload your YouTube clips and then seemingly go to the Russian embassy. Now, speaking of the Russian embassy, they agree with you. They think the BBC is a little bit biased as well. They're suggesting it literally is just government propaganda. I mean, great to see you and Putin aligned again, isn't it? Oh, which reminds me, it's nearly time for Nathan Gill's prison sentence. He was closely aligned to Russia as well. Oh, speaking of a little bit Doge, your ex-girlfriend, Annabelle, said something really interesting today. She pointed out that Andrea Jenkins has been claiming mileage between Yorkshire and Lincoln, even though she said she'd moved to Lincoln. So I don't know when Doge are going to Lincolnshire to have a little look, but I'm going to say maybe they can save some money with Andrea's petrol receipts. Otherwise, Lincolnshire is going to find itself in the same boat as Derbyshire, another one of your councils, which is also going to be raising council tax right up to the limit. Anyway, speaking of being a liar, in your GB News programme tonight, you spoke about that you'd met Trump on Friday night to talk about the BBC debacle. But in your press conference, you said you'd spoken to him on the phone. I mean, I don't know which one it is, or indeed, if it's any. Like, do you remember the time when you said Donald Trump would never ever agree to the Chagos Island deal? And then he did. He said it was a good deal. Remember that when you looked a right old tit? Anyway, if tonight was the truth and you'd been to America again over the weekend, don't forget to declare it. Although, I've got to say, why you're aligning yourself so closely to Trump, I do not know. He's proving to be really unpopular. Hopefully, you're going to follow that playbook as well. Anyway, speaking of stupid, can we discuss this? Because it really ties in with my hypothesis that you are really not very bright at all. You see, I've always thought since the Bloomberg interview, when you were talking about reading history books, that you don't actually understand them. And there's a growing narrative that's trying to make you out to be clever. Whereas I just think you're a brilliant communicator and a brilliant manipulator of people with no qualms about exploiting vulnerable people. So, coming back to tonight's GB News, bearing in mind that you think you're going to be the Prime Minister of Great Britain, in the next election, to give us some insight into your critical thinking, you've declared today that you thought the armistice that stopped the World War, was a mistake. But the really clever people, the historians, say that had the armistice not happened, actually the war would have continued. In fact, US military planners said that without Armistice Day, there would have been 1 million additional Allied deaths. In fact, they're suggesting that without Armistice Day, there would have been a civil war in Germany. And refusing the armistice would have made extremist groups even stronger. Instability would have increased in Europe, and there was a higher risk of communism spreading. Now, none of this is funny, and I'm laughing because this is what you, as a leader back then, would have done. Like, basically, what you've done is just parrot one person's opinion, as opposed to reading around the topic, understanding it, looking at the nuance, and finding out what really would have happened. I mean, I don't know, let me help you out a little bit. Let me bring it to modern day. It would be like, I don't know, like saying that we should have a Brexit, remove ourselves from the EU without a plan to do anything really, without understanding the economic damage it would do to the country, and indeed opening up our borders a little bit, resulting in lots of what you would consider illegal immigrants coming over on small boats. Now, who would have been stupid enough to have suggested that? As you were.